Since everyone is doing the 10-year challenge right now, let's have a look at a few 10-year challenges within some of our favourite games. And as we're looking through them, it's really amazing to see how far games have come. And while so many aspects of games have become significantly better, as you can clearly see, there's still some parts that have somehow gotten significantly worse, and that mainly stems from a few core issues. And these are things like less content and games that are just launched completely unfinished. So today, I want to ask a couple of questions. Are video game developers getting lazy, or are publishers not giving them enough time? Look, this is probably the most popular topic in gaming right now, and it comes off the back of a bunch of games that failed to meet expectations for a bunch of different reasons. But today, I want to take a deep dive into the publisher versus developer dilemma and see who's really at fault for some of the disappointments over the past few months. What is up, guys? Welcome back to TGG. If it's your first time here, I'm all about making videos that can help you make better decisions on what games to buy, but also create conversation around those games. So, if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, feel free to smack that subscribe button down below for more videos like this each and every week. So going over those two main issues that games constantly seem to have nowadays, which are again less content and unfinished games, we'll run through them in that order and see who's to blame. So let's start with the amount of content we're getting in games in 2019. There's not too many AAA franchises that have been around for 10 years, but perhaps one of the biggest is of course the Call of Duty series. 10 years ago, in 2009, we saw the release of one of the most beloved Call of Duty games in history, Modern Warfare 2. But for the sake of this comparison, I'm gonna cheat a little bit and move 1 year ahead to the release of Black Ops, just because I want to compare it to Black Ops 4.
We live in a world where seeing is not believing. Where only a few know what really happened.
Ready when you are.
Just like Modern Warfare 2, Black Ops is right up there in most people's lists in terms of the best Call of Duty game. With the launch of the original Black Ops game, we were introduced to one of the most iconic characters of the series, Frank Woods, in what was a spectacular single-player campaign, or at least for a Call of Duty game. Along with that, Call of Duty Zombies was taken to a new level with a lot of new features, and of course, the Call of Duty multiplayer with 14 maps at launch. And let's keep that number in our heads, alright? 14 maps at launch. Remember that. Let's compare this to the most recent Call of Duty, Black Ops 4. As we all know by now, unless you've been living under a rock, Black Ops 4 launched without a single-player campaign, instead opting to capitalize on the latest trend in Battle Royale, which is actually pretty good. However, from a development standpoint, it's pretty obvious as to which one of the two modes requires more work and more money. With even just a 6-hour campaign, development can take several years and millions of dollars. And instead of investing in that, which a lot of fans undoubtedly wanted to see, they opted to create a Battle Royale that, in my estimation, probably took about a year to develop, if that. Of course, keeping in mind that a lot of the map recycles old parts of maps from previous Call of Duty games. While Zombies remained quite similar, some of the biggest changes have been made to the franchise's multiplayer, with a lot of the changes for the better, and this is mainly due to the specialist system, with 10 specialists available at launch, although most of these were brought back from Black Ops 3. On the downside though, Black Ops 4 launched with 15 maps, and at first you'd think that's an improvement over Black Ops 1. Remember, we said there were 14 maps at launch in Black Ops 1. But 4 of those maps in Black Ops 4 are actually from Black Ops 1, and one of them is from Black Ops 2. So Black Ops 4 actually only introduces a series low 10 new maps, with most of these maps being much smaller than those in Black Ops 1. Look, don't get me wrong, alright, I'm all for fan service, okay? I love the fact that they brought back these 5 maps. These are 5 of my favourite maps in the game, and I guess that is kind of saying something after all, that the old maps are actually my favourite ones. Let's take a look at this. You're telling me that in 10 years, there has somehow been a decrease in the amount of content a company that has always hovered around the 250 employee mark can make? That's simply impossible to believe. While many people have speculated that Black Ops 4 was supposed to have a single player, and that it was Activision's idea to cut that part of the game, Treyarch studio head Dan Bunting said that that was just not part of our plan. We started from a place that we were gonna make a game across the board that can be playable with friends. That's been our mission from day one. So guys, we have no real evidence to assume otherwise, so we'll have to assume he's telling the truth. And by going off this statement, technically, yes, they did accomplish their goal, right? There are more multiplayer modes than ever in a Call of Duty game, but with the extra time from cutting out a time-consuming and expensive campaign, we should expect not less multiplayer maps, but more than ever, not just reskins of old ones. Let's also not forget, Black Ops 1 was in development for 2 years, but since then, Sledgehammer Games has joined in on the development cycle, meaning that Call of Duty games are now in development for 3 years, with there now being 3 developers, with those, of course, being Treyarch, Infinity Ward, and now Sledgehammer Games. So, on top of what we just went over, the fact that they've had an extra 365 days to develop this game is mind-boggling. And while I'm not normally one to bash on the developer, Treyarch, it looks like this one's on you. Now, let's move on to a game that was 100% undeniably launched far too soon. The now infamous Fallout 76. Fallout is probably the biggest loser, or I guess biggest winner, depending on which way you want to look at it, in this 10-year challenge, because they've gone from Fallout 3 in 2008, which has a 91% Metacritic score, and also won IGN's Game of the Year award, for whatever that's worth, to a game that's now hovering around the 50% mark. Fallout 76 was, let's face it, pretty bad, for a long list of reasons. But near the top of that list is that Fallout 76 is the first Fallout game to be always online, which understandably was a problem for some players. Also the fact that the game is... it's boring. While Bethesda came out and said that this is an online game, they also said that it'll be a great game for players who prefer playing the game by themselves as well. And that's just not true. In my opinion, if you absolutely need friends to make a game enjoyable, your game's just not up to scratch. Fallout has always been a single-player experience at its core. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for playing games with friends, and I actually think that a lot more games should try to implement co-op features into their game. But if you're going to turn a single-player franchise into a co-op one, you can't just make an empty world, and think making it co-op or online will bring that world to life. And at the top of the list are the ridiculous amount of bugs. If you tried to play the game on day one, you'd probably know that the servers crashed, and a lot of people couldn't even play the game they paid a lot of money for. And even to this day, the game is not 100% fixed. While of course a lot of the bugs have been resolved, playing Fallout 76 today will still not really be a pleasant experience. So why did Fallout 76 launch the way it did? Well, I don't think anyone really knows. Fallout is published by Bethesda, and when they saw the state the game was in, they should have delayed the game, because there's no way anyone at Bethesda was actually proud of the game they were about to launch. So I'd say this one is on the publisher. So, we've gone over a game that launched with less content, and we've talked about a game that launched unfinished. But there's one more game I want to talk about. And to sum up the ultimate video game 10-year challenge, let's talk about a game that failed on both of those fronts. Battlefield 5's launch was the most negative we've ever seen for a Battlefield game, which is saying something considering the state that a game like Battlefield 4 launched in. But Battlefield 5 is the pinnacle of how games have changed for the worse over the past 10 years. And it stems from both the publisher, EA, and also the game's developer, DICE. Battlefield 5 launched with 2 modes. War Stories, which are 3 single-player stories that take about 1 to 2 hours to complete each, and of course, the game's multiplayer. While Battlefield 5's War Stories are fairly short and there are only 3 at launch, I'll give that aspect of the game a pass, just because they actually did include a single player. But the main part of the game I want to talk about is the multiplayer. And sticking with the 10-year challenge, let's go back to a game that launched just under 10 years ago, with Battlefield Bad Company 2. Bad Company 2 is, arguably, the fanbase's favourite Battlefield game in the franchise. While obviously not being perfect, Bad Company 2 launched with a wide variety of vehicles, weapons, and maps, with specific maps being altered for specific game modes, with rush maps and conquest maps. Battlefield games typically launch with about 9 maps. Bad Company 2 launched with even more than that, while Battlefield 5 launched with a lowly 8 maps. And while each Battlefield game typically launches with at least a few iconic maps, after putting in a lot of time in Battlefield 5, I can only remember 2 names off by heart. Most of Battlefield 5's maps are bland and honestly easily forgettable, with no real iconic landmarks on any maps, except maybe the bridge on Twisted Steel. And on top of that, a quick look at Battlefield Wiki will show you that although Battlefield 5 has more vehicles, Bad Company 2 actually had more different types of vehicles, which shows that over a 10-year period, Battlefield has actually regressed in terms of gameplay diversity. And we haven't even gotten into what EA is calling a quote-unquote live service. And for all other publishers and developers out there, what you're about to see is the perfect example of how to not do a live service. Imagine you buy a set of clothes online, for example. Let's say you're buying an outfit. You're getting a shirt, some pants, and some shoes. And then your delivery comes, and you're really excited for that delivery, right? And you get your shirt, and you get your pants, and then it just sort of has a little letter in the box, and it says, "We'll give you your shoes in a couple of months, and we'll give it to you for free." And I mean, you can still wear that outfit, right? You're not going to look completely stupid. You have a shirt and some pants, but it's not really what you expected. You wanted those shoes to make that outfit complete. That's basically what it's like playing Battlefield 5 today. Battlefield 5 has charged us for a series low 8 maps and a shorter than ever single player experience. But what some people don't know is that Battlefield 5 also has a co-op mode and a battle royale. But they're not out yet. So for those of us that have bought the game, we've actually bought half a game, because EA has packaged the second half up and rebundled it as quote-unquote free DLC down the line, in what's really a pathetic attempt to artificially prolong the game's lifespan and keep players coming back for months to come, instead of giving us the content we actually paid for at launch. There's a big difference between launching a complete game and then giving additional free DLC down the line, and launching a game that only has half the game modes as its biggest competitor, and releasing content later that should have been in the game at launch. And unfortunately, Battlefield 5 is essentially the prime example of what games have become in 2019. And for us as gamers and consumers, it's unfortunate to see. So let's sum it all up. In the past 10 years, obviously, so many parts of games have gotten a lot better. And these are mainly things like graphics, core gameplay mechanics, sound quality, and the like. And you'd sort of expect that as technology advances. But in that same time period, we've seen, honestly, both developers and publishers take what seems like a big step backwards in terms of putting the consumer first. And as a result, games have gotten a lot worse in terms of value for money, the amount of content we get, and also really just being able to trust the product that you're actually buying. And in terms of who's to blame, the developer or the publisher, in most cases, I think publishers should be held responsible for games launching unfinished. But for a game like Black Ops 4, for example, where a developer has been given a reasonable amount of time to launch a game and fail to meet content expectations, it's on the devs. So really, it can go either way. So now I want to flip the conversation over to you. What are your thoughts on how games have changed over the past 10 years? While there's of course been great improvements, other areas have actually suffered. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give the video a thumbs up, and if you're new here, subscribe for more videos like this each and every week. Click one of the 2 videos on the screen if you haven't seen them yet. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.